19th regular meeting of the River Falls Board of Education is called to order. This meeting has been properly notified. Do we have any visitors or delegations who would like to address the board this evening? Hearing none, I have one announcement before we go into a public hearing, and that is to say that WASD, our School Board Association, is recognizing, Cindy, you for your work. Every time we go to some kind of a WASB event, they keep track and we get points. And so you have earned a level 1 pin and a fancy.
Thank you.
So it's in recognition of your service to the school board.
Well, thank you.
Okay, one of the things that the board is responsible for doing is holding a public hearing if we are requesting any kind of a waiver from the DPI. So at this point, I'll call on Dave Bell to give us some background about this public hearing.
Okay, so what you have in your packet is a streamlined application for flexibility for school districts to have some ability to make some modifications to their practices. And if those modifications were to get in the way of our ability to meet state statutes in certain areas, this flexibility would happen. So I think the actual link is it's actually in the second part where we would take action, but it might make sense to pull it up right now. And then if you could just slide it to page 5. So in the application, what we have here is a recognition of that we're doing business a little bit differently this year. And specifically, we've increased responsibilities for teachers, administrators, and support staff in the areas of planning for multiple learning environments, technology, professional development, additional cleaning and mitigation responsibilities, and amplified stakeholder communication expectations. So the DPI has recognized that those adjustments have taken place and allowed us the opportunity to apply for waivers in other areas where we might not meet our normal expectations. So the nice thing is that DPI set it up where we can apply for waivers throughout the year when it becomes abundantly clear that we're not going to meet a specific statute. So at this time, we would hold a hearing in front of the board to address 2 waivers. The first waiver is Educator Effectiveness. So that's our evaluation system for teachers or certified staff. And so our modification, in a normal year, we obviously meet or exceed the requirements for the Wisconsin Educator Evaluation System. We're looking to modify it in a way that still meets our goal of continuous improvement, but recognizes the adjustments that I kind of spoken to that we have to do this year, and recognizes that in this type of environment, a full evaluation cycle like we normally do maybe isn't realistic, from the fact that it's going to be challenging for our principals to complete all of the normal observations that would take place and gain a full picture of how our teachers are doing. And so with those things all together, we're looking for some flexibility to modify that. So modify doesn't mean we eliminate everything. We're still going to do the lion's share of what is expected of us. We're still doing goal setting around school learning objectives, which is really looking at current student data and making sure that we're seeing measurable growth. We're still setting goals, professional goals as teachers and principals, so we can track our growth. We're just looking at some flexibility around the quantity of evaluation or quantity of observations that are going to take place, and then some flexibility in the completion of every summary evaluation. So that's the first waiver that we would be applying for, and in the application, the specific statutes that we're going to be asking for flexibility for our outline. The second one is hours of instruction. We've been modifying it feels like every week we modify the calendar just a little bit and tweak it, and so it's become abundantly clear with those modifications that we're not going to meet the state recommendations for hours of instruction. So specifically at the elementary level, in PK through 5, we're enacting early releases. And those early releases obviously are going to adjust our face-to-face instruction time. And then at the middle and high school in grades 7 through 12, our Wednesdays and our hybrid schedule it's not realistic to demonstrate that those are the same hours or minutes of instruction as the face-to-face times. So when we make those adjustments, it's going to become abundantly clear that we're not going to quite reach our normal hours of instruction. And this is the way that we ask for DPI flexibility on that area. Are there any questions or feedback from anyone?
I'm gonna play the new card here, but a new guy card, but obviously this is related to COVID, but in the past, have we applied for any waivers or
No.
exceptions? Okay.
It's exceptionally rare. I think the only time a school district might do some waiver around hours of instruction would be if you were in a construction time.
Okay.
But even then, you probably wouldn't waive hours of instruction. You would just waive flexibility when you started the school year. You could probably try to start in August or maybe extend the school day. So this is pretty rare.
Okay.
We did it last year. But besides that,
Oh,
obviously for obvious reasons.
okay. Thanks.
But following up on that, but this year, is it fair to say that we're probably not the only school district in the state asking for a waiver?
Right. That is fair to say. I would say I don't have any data to support my guess, but my guess would be almost every district would ask for some flexibility. Some of it has to do with how you interpret your virtual time.
Yeah.
But our realistic assessment of virtual instruction means that our minutes aren't going to match up what they normally would.
Do we have a reasonable expectation that they will grant us the waivers?
Yep. Yes.
This is just, maybe you can't answer this question. It just seems odd to me if almost 100% of the districts are going to be making all these same requests, that they would go through, like, this is a streamlined process, but it still seems somewhat time consuming rather than just saying, we're going to give some people some flexibility and not make a whole bunch of extra work for everybody.
Yeah, I think it has to do with the fact that the statutes are on the books.
Okay.
And so the legislative branch would have to make an adjustment to the actual statute.
Yeah.
So this is their way, while it does seem a little clunky, it's probably more streamlined than waiting for them to have.
Okay. I just am envisioning all the extra work, the district has had to do, and then a department of people at DPI who normally don't ever process these, waivers, and all of a sudden there's every district in the state is submitting it. It just seems like an awful lot to deal with.
Like I said, they've really streamlined the process.
Okay.
And they understand that the way we're doing business this year is quicker.
Sure.
And they also, I guess another thing is they anticipate that we will get back to normal levels of expectations. And so, as opposed to changing the statute, just allowing flexibility.
They don't want to just throw it out for
Yep.
hopefully only 1 year.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Are there any other questions?
So this is the hearing portion of this discussion. We will take action later on, but this is a good chance to be able to ask any of the questions that we have. So any more? Galen?
I have a question related to hours of instruction. Like, how much of a difference is it compared to
Yeah.
what a regular year would be?
Yeah, so at K5, the changes in the early release piece. And so we're about 60 hours short. And that number is a little bit higher when you look at 7th through 12th grade. Those hours are, I have that exact math, but it's probably, it really depends on our definition of instruction on those other days. But it's probably twice as much at grade 7 through 12. Because what we're not doing is we're not saying on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, if you're an early week kid, that you have 395 minutes of instruction like you do on Monday and Tuesday. Because we know that's not accurate. And so we have systems in place to the skinny schedule on Wednesdays. And we have other ways to estimate what our hours of instruction are in those late weeks. And that's why I'm kind of, it's about 20 days. However, we have to understand that the other thing that we're asking for flexibility on is just the ability to track our minutes and understand that counting minutes in a system like this is a little bit tricky, because I know that some students on certain Thursdays and Fridays may actually spend 395 minutes of time interacting with teachers and working and receiving instruction through that virtual format. but it's impossible in this sort of new environment to get a specific amount of time. So that's the other thing we're allowing ourselves flexibility on is the minute per minute accounting.
The last question, that's a pretty long list of things on that application. There's, I mean, those three are really the only thing that
So they set it up in a manner, really their guidance says only request the flexibility when it becomes abundantly clear that you're not going to meet it.
okay,
And so at this point, these are the two that we know we're not going to meet.
okay,
We may, and I don't anticipate, right? Full transparency, we don't anticipate having to make any other adjustments to any of the other statutes that we could apply for flexibility to.
okay,
But things can change, and this allows us the chance to come back
okay.
if we see that we could move those others.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, thanks, Dave. We'll move on to informational items, and the first one is the superintendent's report.
Just want to give a shout out and say thank you to the River Falls Community Foundation for their generous financial gift to help us purchase some additional Wi-Fi hotspots. They provided funding for 10 additional hotspots, and then Optimus Club also provided some additional funding for a couple more hotspots. And so wanted to give public recognition and say thank you to those two civic groups for their generosity in supporting our kids.
It's an example of how this school district is really supported by our community. Thank you. Student report, Dalen.
I'll talk a little bit about school right now. I think that more people are falling into a routine and understanding of how things are working out and being more comfortable with it. I know that it's not perfect right now, and students are really just trying to figure out how to make it through each day. It's been pretty difficult, but I think we're all learning and we're trying our best. This week is homecoming week, so we're trying our best to, at least the student council is working really hard to make sure everyone feels some sort of normalcy. We're still doing dress-up days and trying to keep kids involved. So that's pretty exciting. And then I do have later to talk about more stuff with homecoming, but I'll save that till when we get to that point. But yeah, it's been really interesting being back at home and back and forth, but it's been good.
Good, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, our next informational item, it refers to potential bond refinancing. What I'll say about this is one of the responsibilities of the school board to be a good steward of taxpayer dollars is to look for opportunities that are present in the way that we are structuring debt and leveraging reselling bonds. And so we have an opportunity that's coming before us with some notes that are coming due, and Jeff Seeley and his crew, Tammy and Jerry, will come and give us some information. Chad and Jamie are also welcome to chime in. So please come forward and welcome, and thank you for the pens.
The highlight, right?
Right.
But thank you for having us. And we went through this at the Finance Committee. I see there's some people who weren't there in the audience. So your 2012-A and your 2013-A bonds, they have a call date coming up. And a call date means an opportunity to refinance or refund the bonds to save taxpayer dollars. So we ran the estimates on refunding with lower interest rates, and you all have a handout. So I'm going to just read out the number on page 5. Your savings on refinancing the estimated to be $570,000. Okay, with that, Jamie, Chad, and I have had discussions on if there is a way to save more money and maintain better flexibility for future needs. So we looked at moving bond payments forward. You have the capacity under your existing mill rate for debt service to actually pay off some of these bonds earlier instead of just doing straight refinancing, moving some of the payments forward. And that would cut off the very last payment on the 2012 and 2013 bonds. So by moving them forward, you're actually increasing the potential to save dollars. So on this, you can see about a $170,000 increase in savings to the taxpayers. If you look in page 8, this is moving some of the bond payments forward, and we're estimating almost $740,000 in savings. By moving it forward, what we're also doing is saving taxpayer dollars, but also creating or maintaining some of the flexibility we had built in when we sold the 2018-2019 bonds for capital needs that might come up in the future, such as 2029. If you remember, we structured it so there was a drop in your tax levy. What that drop would allow you to do is, if you have needs, you may or may not, but you could address capital needs in 2029 by issuing bonds and without, up to a certain point, without exceeding the existing tax rate that people are paying on the debt. So it was important to maintain that. By restructuring, we were able to maintain that drop down in 2029 and not change the dynamic that we set back in 2018, 2019. So those are the two options in the packets that we reviewed with the Finance Committee. And do you have any questions?
No, just the committee seemed receptive to Jeff's presentation with the plan to bring this back for board action in the form of a resolution that's required at the November board meeting. So if you have questions for Jeff at this time, or if something comes up between now and that November meeting, there's time for those questions to be asked and addressed.
Jeff, is this net of cost of the refinancing? Okay, it's net. Okay.
And keep in mind that the interest rates are not actually locked in until you sell. So the timeline you referred to as the first step would be at your next board meeting. You would sell these in January, and that's when the interest rate will be locked in. Right now, most of you know we're seeing incredibly low interest rates. The best we've seen in 60 years or more. So there's really not, the only thing people are saying is the presidential election may fluctuate, but when we see those items, they usually settle back down into what we would typically expect. And there's not much else out there as far as talk on what might disrupt these low interest rates.
So if I could just repeat what I said at the committee meeting is, you're really coming forward with good news and better news. That one option is to save $500,000 on the taxpayers by refinancing these, and the other is to save $750,000 to the taxpayers by refinancing these. So that's why we were so receptive to your presentation.
Interesting timing. These bonds are callable within a certain window of time, and when happenstance occurs like this, they're callable. And with, I'm assuming the board would go ahead in November, you'd be taking advantage of lower interest rates and still creating greater flexibility, saving taxpayer dollars along the way.
It's lovely to be in a position where it's really just lots of good news for the district. So, anything else? Thank you for being here, Jeff, and Tammy and Jerry, thank you for coming. I expect that we'll see you again. So, thank you for your work on behalf of the district to help us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Jeff, bye-bye. Okay, Judy, do you have anything else you want to say on that one? So we will move into the learning environment updates for the virtual e-school, grades 7 to 12, the hybrid, and then the in-person. So I think Jennifer and the principals have something to offer.
I think just to start with e-school updates, what we did is we really put together a transition plan so that we could communicate effectively with our families if they are seeking transition. So we continue to have some students that are seeking more socialization or do feel safe and might want to return to their homeschool setting. We also, on the other hand, have families that are on a waiting list to transition into the virtual preschool learning environment. So we wanted to make sure that we were clearly communicating with all of our families. So this information is provided to you as an update this evening, as well as sent out to all of our families in the weekly family email that we send out, so that families can be thinking and make family plans and considerations that best meet their needs. So we are continuing to honor transitions at the elementary level at the trimester. So we've given our families some recommended dates so that it can help us prepare for transition internally as well. If we have students that want to come back, we prepare our classrooms within our home schools for them, as well as make sure that we have spacing, can assign teachers to them and get ready to welcome them back into the classroom, as well as there's a transition to onboard students that want to go into the online learning platform as well. Again, we're staffed, and the board has approved certain class size limits. So we do have limits as to how many that we can actually accept into that particular program. But we try to be as clear as possible, both at the elementary level for the trimester transitions in and out, as well as on the second page of your document, the secondary transitions in and out. So we're communicating this information with families on our website, directly sending them to our families, and wanted to make it an update for you as well, so that if families in the community are now considering this is an option, they would know when that transition timeline would be as well. So just kind of wanted to share that for some clarity with you as well. If someone asks you, then you also know we're continuing on with our transition phase.
Jennifer, you say your family, our families, that's every family in this district has communicated the deadlines and such, right? Okay.
Questions? Thank you for having it so clear and easily explainable to people. That would be helpful. All right, so do we want to talk about hybrid for grade 7 through 12?
Or John's way, he's finishing up. his
He's right here.
He's right behind you.
He's right
Hi,
here.
Mark, how are you? Either way, you can go first.
I was taking a Spanish class. Monday nights. Did you say there's
All right, we're back. Can I give an update on the hybrid? I know Kit sent out a survey to his parents, students, and teachers. We just sent one out to the teachers. And so this past week's been a good time for both of us to reflect on some of the feedback we've gotten and some broad reflections. One of the things we talked about last week were the challenges with the hybrid model. And so what I did, I wanted to take some time to take a look at if we made any switch on that distance learning day from Wednesday to Friday or Wednesday to Monday, how that would impact the challenges that we identified on the previous slide. In terms of content coverage, I think this is a challenge we're all facing nationwide. We have limited minutes. As I mentioned, math, for example, kids get 88 minutes once a week, face-to-face. Not a lot of time. So in terms of content coverage, it doesn't matter if we move it from Wednesday to Friday or Wednesday to Monday. There's always going to be work to do there. We have to be mindful of how much time we're doing in terms of our distance learning with our kids on that day. We could add 10 minutes. There's opportunities for office hours or small group instruction in the afternoon. That doesn't matter if we moved it from Wednesday to Friday and Monday. Attendance, moving it from Wednesday to Friday or Wednesday to Monday, I don't see a huge change. We are working with students case by case. We've done home visits. We've had conversations with students. We've made phone calls to parents. So changing that, I don't think impacts attendance. In terms of timing, this has been a big conversation. And if you really think about it, if you consider, just make one minor shift or adjustment, and you say that your Monday is now your Wednesday, and you start the week there with instruction, there really isn't a change if you moved it to Wednesday or moved it to Monday. Teaching in 3 worlds, still teaching in 3 worlds, still a challenge, no matter if we move it or not. One of the things, if you saw the feedback, time to do a hybrid model is very challenging because of the face-to-face, because of the distance learning, and then that day in the middle. What we're hearing from staff is that they really appreciate some time. So we're proposing that once a month, that they take that Wednesday, which is a virtual day, with their students, and they have a prep for the day. In terms of student organization, I think Monday is actually, for our students, it's the best in terms of organization, if we did that hybrid day on that day. It sets the kids up for, especially the later week kids, the Thursday, Friday kids, it helps them get organized for the week. So I think if any improvement on this, I think actually moving it to Monday would be beneficial. Wednesday, there's no change. Friday, I have concerns, may make organization more challenging for our students. And then I just had some other questions, other concerns. I think we have to be mindful of how often we change this school year. And we just can't continue to change on students, change on teachers. I think there's got to be a really good reason for us to change. And I don't know if we're at that critical point yet where we need to make that change. So here's the results for our survey. I think I shared this last time. But, this was a race. The Wednesday, staying on Wednesday, be the winner. Friday would be the second choice. But my opinion, I think Mondays would actually be the best for our students. So last thing I want to share with you is we keep talking about the potential of going distance learning. We've had very few conversations about going the other way. And I think, it's my opinion, I think we have to at least start getting ready, because that's going to take time. If we ever do want to start transitioning kids back, we need to start that now, because as you know, cohorting 6th graders is a heck of a lot of work. It's going to take us a long time to do that. And I'm not saying we do this next week or next quarter, but we are in the process of at least getting prepared for that time when we come back, what that potentially look like in the event that our COVID numbers do improve. It would look very, very similar to what the 6th graders are doing. So it would be kids cohorted together. We'd have to get creative with exploratories because kids are on all different exploratories. At this point, they'd be in the 3rd tent, they'd be in their 3rd exploratory. I do have a solution for that. I'm not going to share that right now. But I also think there's some key questions with this. So at what point do we make that switch? And I ask these questions because if the elementary, we haven't had a ton of cases at the elementary level or recorded or face-to-face. We haven't had a ton of staff yet at this point in the year. How many cases have we had case 6? How many cases have we had staff test positive case 6? There's 0 students in our building in 6th grade. There's 2 paras that I know of. How much contact tracing have we done case 6? Not a lot. I got to do 3. That was it. So my other question is, you wonder, well, why are some districts that were face-to-face now all of a sudden going distance learning? My question for them would be, did they cohort? Because I think that's a really big key in this decision. So anyways, we're working behind the scenes. We're scratching the surface. We're just starting to have this conversation. We haven't even talked with our teachers about this yet. But we always seem to be talking about the other way, the distance. But our numbers, to me, I would like to start having that conversation going the other way. I know that our teachers are frustrated teaching the hybrid. I know our kids are frustrated in the hybrid model. And I think some kids' survey results will say that as well. So I'll turn over to Kid.
I don't have a fancy PowerPoint.
Just a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
You made the comment that we can't keep changing on our teachers and our students. We haven't actually changed from the way we started the year, have we?
No, but I'm saying with this pivot, we're talking this conversation, we changed the hybrid that Wednesday till Friday or Monday. I don't know if there's enough evidence for us to change at this point, just to change that day.
Yeah.
That's what my point was.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't have a nice PowerPoint this evening. Most of you have known me for maybe 20 years in some cases. I'm a person who always has a plan for something, and tonight I don't, quite frankly, have a plan. What I do have is a lot of information for you. We had over 550 of our parents get back in terms of the survey, their feedback, and it was outstanding. We had it on all different avenues and spectrums, from as far as we should be virtual to we should be fully face-to-face to keep up the great work, the hybrid's working great. We had over 340 students respond back, and again, across the board in terms of what you can imagine. And then our staff, we had 58 of our 68 staff respond back in terms of asking for feedback and advice, and that too was a little bit all over the place. What I do know in it is all kids and parents and staff are thankful that we are at least partially in school, in session. That came clearly through our survey. I also know that our students and our parents and our staff are ready to opt in virtually. What I mean by that is not to require kids to be synchronously from home every single day, but to have the ability to opt in when they need that extra and added support. About 75% of our staff is at that comfort level. And then I would say 90% of the parents want that. And I think there's a little bit of leeriness by our students. There's only about 60% of our students that would like that option, because I think they're afraid that they're going to go all the way in, because the results of should we go fully synchronous every day with every kid, whether they were in school or out, was across the board 90% or higher with a big no in that category. They did not want to move in that direction. And I think that again speaks volumes to what we do as a district here, which is we think of kids first. We don't think of instructional curriculum and content delivery and other things. We're keeping mindfulness in kids and what's happening in the pandemic. And I appreciate that feedback both from our students, from our faculty, and from our parents. Because again, we have to keep kids at the center of this. What I do know that scares me to death in all 20 years that I have kids that are stressed out hugely. I have more, honestly, drops of high achieving students from AP coursework to DACP coursework to you name it, that has a nice little star next to it that says honors, because our kids are stressed, massively stressed. I have stress levels on the other side of it where kids who barely made it in a 5-day-a-week school are now being asked to make it in a hybrid format, and that worries me. I have teachers that shined in a 5-day face-to-face work, and their whole world is tipped upside down. And then I have others, teachers that are thriving in something completely different, with a different mindset, and doing outstanding things and stretching beyond their own boundaries. That's where we're at, honestly, at the high school level. I worry mostly about the homework load. Parents said that very clearly, both in school days and off school days. Students said that loud and clear as well, that they're working their tails off, and I think Dalen can talk about that a little bit. I worry about the mental health of our faculty. I worry about the mental health of our students, and I worry about the mental health of our parents trying to juggle all of these things. I don't have answers. I don't believe day changes. I don't believe other things are just going to, with a snap of the fingers, make everything just perfect. I'm standing here in front of you saying that because I'm a person who likes to have answers. And I like to have answers, especially when I'm on the web and everything else in front of you too. I don't have those answers yet, but I do know that the survey provided a lot of guidance and input for us as a leadership team to talk with our students more, to talk with our faculty more, to still problem solve. Because if I'm being very optimistic, I still think we got to live in this hybrid for a considerable amount of time still over the holiday break. What I do know is that we have to change the levels of stress for our students and our faculty and our families in one form or another. I don't have an answer for you tonight on that though, but I am going to continue to dig through this, look at all of the wonderful comments that we have, and continue to give you an update as we move forward. It's about as transparent and honest as I can be for you. Pretty quiet.
So, well, I'll take the first comment. And so it sounds to me like, thank you for your honesty. That's the first thing. The second thing is you're going to be digging deeply into the surveys.
Very much so.
What's the next thing that you will be doing to try to come with some clarity to address all of those issues that you laid out, and how can we help?
I think, again, it's just the time and grace that's needed. So it might be time and grace for our staff. As Mark had suggested, that they may need a day a month. I do believe we need to continue to work with our teachers to give our students time and grace. when it comes to homework and other things related to it. We're still trying to apply something in terms educationally that's not fitting in our current world and framework, and we're getting a little better at it each time. I know we're better than we were in the spring. I know we were better than the first 3 weeks of school, but we have a long way to go to keep it sustainable, healthy, and what we talked about 2 weeks ago for our staff was we have to move away from survival mode. As a former old history teacher and thinking about the Great Depression and things, we can sit and say, we're never going to get through this, but at some point we need to charge forward. How do we continue to charge forward in our hybrid format or other ways so that we can try to strive to thrive as opposed to survive? That doesn't mean we're going to thrive always every single day, but we have to find ways to get better. And again, our staff is open to that. I'm really encouraged by all of the positive comments from our parents, students, and community members thanking our teachers. They're busting their tails, and so are our kids. And it was very evident that our community supports those educators in that environment. So we need to continue to find ways to do that. I don't have just a clear-cut answer for you, though, to say by November 2nd, this is what we're going to do. We need to continue that dialogue and continue that work with those who are in the trenches each and every day. That's our students and that's our staff, and we'll try to do the best we can. Still pretty heavy in here.
What?
Dalen, is where you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I can add just a little bit and expand. I first want to say that I know as a student and a lot of other students I talked to, we were very appreciative of the fact that there was something sent out to us just to have a say. I think I've said it before, but we feel as students that a lot of stuff is just happening without us knowing, and just being able to give our insight and opinions. It might not necessarily be the make or break, but just to have that be there is really awesome and to be involved in. I'll talk a little bit about stress levels. I know personally I am extremely stressed all the time right now, just trying to keep up with all the work, especially being a late week student. I think that we're at a little bit of a disadvantage since we start our week out virtually, and it doesn't feel like it's really school yet until Thursday. So I think that has been really getting the kids and finding that routine and a purpose to do things, because right now a lot of stuff feels like it doesn't matter anymore. I think that might also be more of a senior thing, but just like it's really hard to find that motivation and keep pushing through because we don't know what the future holds. We hope for a better future, and we hope that eventually before we graduate, we have some more normalcy. But honestly, no one knows right now, and that's really hard for a lot of students, especially the kids that are very high achieving. And I know that I've loved school my entire life, and right now I'm really struggling to find that passion again. But I think that we're all very happy that our teachers are putting in that effort. I see my teachers every single day trying their best to make sure they're pushing out content to us and making sure that we're understanding what's supposed to be happening. And it's not always perfect. My AP Lit class is a fully synchronous class. We have that every single day online. And I know that if I had to do all my classes like that, I would not be doing any better. It's really hard to do stuff fully online because it honestly just doesn't work. Our Chromebooks just don't really have the ability. I can't have a Zoom meeting up and a Google Slides run at the same time, which is really difficult because that's a lot of how that class works at least. So I think that is where a lot of that negative feedback comes to potentially going fully synchronous every single day. I know I would be appreciative, and a lot of kids would just have the ability to drop in during a class and not necessarily be required to attend for the entire time. But I think we all are just hoping for something to happen that is more positive, especially the shift in the Wednesday day, I think would be really beneficial to either the Monday or Friday. And hopefully we all can relax a little bit before the end of the term.
I'm just curious on what's that core cause of students feeling like they're more overwhelmed with homework? And you kind of brought out one element that I want to ask about is you made the comment that it almost doesn't feel like school really starts until Thursday. Are you using Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to do schoolwork as well? Or is that just kind of getting lost in the shuffle?
I think it's really dependent on who you are. I try my best to keep the motivation, but you don't feel like school starts until you're in person, because you know that later in the week, you'll get to go to school, you'll get to see your teachers, and stuff is due those days. So I think that's really where the disconnect is kids aren't feeling like, well, I'm not in person, so it's not due. Like, it's still the weekend for me. And I think that's where that struggle comes to, okay, it is school, like it's Monday, I have to be doing stuff today. I can't just leave it all till Wednesday. So I think that's where the biggest thing is. And then we kind of push that on ourselves in a way. I don't necessarily want to blame teachers fully or students fully, but it's both. Like, it feels like we're getting so much more work for the amount of days that we're in school. It's just that not balance of, okay, I have school every single day because I'm here every day. Now it's like, I have all the stuff that I have to do Monday, but I don't have to go to school.
More
So
of a time management
So it's
thing?
yeah, it's a
Time
time
management.
management, but it's all, but yeah.
Time
But
management.
yeah, being a
management,
kid, it's hard to do that. And, we want to try our best, but I think we're all just stressed and we just want to be at school with our teachers.
I think there is a, maybe it's a misperception, but there's a perception that this hybrid approach is attempting to achieve a school content as sort of so-called normal, but you approach some of that content online and you approach some of it in class. And it sounds like that's not really happening. And again, it's probably comes down to different students who handle it differently. But I'm wondering just if a simple change of a little more, and you actually mentioned it, a little bit more opportunity to sort of check in synchronously on those days you're not in school would help that situation, just to help give a student a feeling of, I don't have to wait till Thursday to do anything, and I'm just going to go do something else on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or the other way around if you're a Monday, Tuesday in person. But just a synchronous touch base more frequently when you're not in school in person. Maybe that, I don't know how to achieve that, but maybe that would help.
Yeah.
Because my concern, I think we're doing great. I mean, in terms of effort, everybody's just pouring their effort and their heart and soul into it, and I just think it's fantastic. My concern is if we get too lax about this, and we decide, well, let's bring everybody back because the numbers seem to be maintaining and so on, and then all of a sudden we become a super spreader. Now everybody stays home all the time, and that's the quickest way to have that happen. And that's going to be the worst situation, I think. So.
That's why I asked the question about K6.
Yeah.
In terms of numbers.
So far, yeah, I know, and that's great. I think that's a testament to the mitigation efforts that we put in place. So.
Can I ask you another question? Can you just tell me about Wednesdays from your perspective?
Wednesdays are difficult as a late week, at least, because I know I'm only really in 2 real classes right now, so this is a little difficult. My AP Chem class is offset, so the early week is about 2 days ahead of us. And then, but my AP Lit class, we're completely together. So that Wednesday is pretty easy. We can do things together. But on the Wednesday for my AP Chem class, there is that disconnect. Like, they would have taken a unit test before we did, so it's mostly for us to catch up. So I think it's really just, we're not together, and it's hard to find stuff to do when they're 2 days ahead of you in content or even on a whole other unit than we are. So it's been really difficult to find purpose in those days that hits every base for every student and advances what they're doing on their days and what we're trying to achieve on ours.
How do they decide which class, like the AP Lit class goes 5 days a week and the AP Chem class, so is 2 and 2?
Anything, so it's only dual credited classes right now, college courseworks that have to hit a certain course and curriculum sequence along with AP coursework. So we've given that option only to those 2 groups for the same reason Dalen said, in terms of trying to have that all day, every day is exactly what 90% of our families do not want at this particular time. So that's the struggle. So we're doing it because we have to follow a specific course sequence. And back to Mike's point, we're covering about 70, our goal is 75 to 80% of our content in a normal year. The struggle though is kids are out of school 3 out of 5 days and only in school 2 out of 5. So what has to happen is there's a lot of students receiving direct instruction by watching a video of their teacher instead of a dialogue, which is what learning is all about, right? There has to be a dialogue. And so we're missing that dialogue piece to a certain extent, and that's why you're seeing students wanting to at least be able to opt in. The problem currently in term one with the opt-in is Dalen, if she opts in, is actually wouldn't be in the same instructional sequence right now. So we have to get our instructional sequencing on the same days. So what is happening on Monday, and let's say Dalen's AP Chem class is happening for Dalen either at home or in that class on Monday. So Dalen then can choose to pop in or not, if she's comfortable in that content. That's where we have to get. Calendars don't work always perfectly that way though.
Another challenge, if I'm thinking about this right, is the teachers are teaching face-to-face 4 days a week.
Correct.
So it's
They can't just drop.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. So if somebody wants to chime in online, well, they're in front of the class, they can't just go do that. Yeah.
Very much so. In a different lesson.
Yeah,
Which the
yeah.
student would have other questions from
Yeah.
a different lesson on. That's the struggle right now, is the timing. It's more about timing of instruction and the dialogue that comes with learning to make sure we can get it on that same page. I think if we can do that, we can relieve, I don't want to say all the stress by any means, but we can relieve some of the stressors that are being felt by teachers, students, and families.
I wish I could say something too that would just say, you know, hey, that maybe this will make it better. I don't pretend that I would be able to do that, but I think what would be helpful for us to know is like what are, you know, what is priority one, what is priority two, and is it getting everyone synced up? It sounds like maybe there's at the middle school level, based on the survey, you know, there's not a lot of the desire is to just kind of stay where we're at in terms of it being on Wednesday, but it sounds like it creates an awful lot of problems from the last couple meetings in terms of getting kids on the same page to make that a useful day. So it's hard for me to weigh out if we're asked to make a decision, it's hard for me to weigh out which one of those factors is the strongest pull basically. And you know, whether it would make things easier for teachers or families, or worse for families, but better for teachers. What I keep hearing though is we've got to find a way to try to make it a little bit easier on the teachers and keep the kids engaged. You know, I guess those seem to be kind of the overarching things, whether that's relieving burden or what. But I will say I'm very uncomfortable with just the level that has been placed on everybody in the district in terms of staff, teachers, administrators. But if this is a month and a half in, you know, what does it look like 3 months down the road? There's only so long I feel like we can run that red line to expect that people can keep doing it this way. And I don't know how to fix that. I just, I guess I appreciate that we're having a conversation. I'd like to try to find a way to do that.
And again, that's why we're having these conversations in October with potential term changes and things to see if there are opportunities to make those small changes. We don't want, again, as Mark said, blow up our whole schedule and say this is a new hybrid schedule. That's not what we're here for. We're here to find our quick wins and modifications from what we are currently doing to what we could be potentially doing. So that's in the crux of things of us, again, coming together with nearly 1,900 students in order to do that, and families, and try to get everybody in terms of what's best for most.
So I have two questions. The first one is if you could comment about the technology issues that Dalen was referring to, how widespread and concern is that? That's the first one. The second question is, Kit in particular, you mentioned that there are some teachers who are finding great success and some new challenges. And I certainly do not lay any blame on anybody who is not in that category, because we're asking them to do something completely different from ever before. So I'm not saying that. But what I'm asking is why? Is it based on their expertise, or is it based on discipline, as in teaching math compared to teaching literature, for example?
I would, for the first question in terms of technology, the Chromebooks itself, so anytime, again, you've all, hopefully, I think you've all participated in a Zoom or you've shared your screen. When you do that, you lose your whole kind of bar of like your Brady Bunch, right? And so when you lose your Brady Bunch as a teacher and you're trying to present and you're also trying to monitor a classroom, it becomes very difficult to figure out who's engaged and who's not. So it becomes a different digital management of a classroom versus a classroom management of me seeing all of your faces, so to speak. In Dalen's case with the technology, when a teacher, as you know, when somebody shares their screen, it takes over your screen unless you minimize it or split the screen, and you can see Dalen's Chromebook is like a 12 or 13-inch Chromebook. If she splits that screen, you're not really seeing the PowerPoint, and then you're really not being able to see anybody who you're engaging with. And so it's not a technological gap issue in terms of disconnectivity. It's a technological issue in terms of just the interaction and the dialogue that's supposed to happen in a normal learning environment.
So it's not that we have a whole bunch of really crummy Chromebooks. It's that Chromebooks themselves are not a device that are very conducive to what we need them to do.
It's not
That's more
optimal.
it.
Correct. It's just not optimal from a screen size standpoint and for what we're asking kids to do and live on every single day. That's a challenge for them. Dalen, you have something to contribute?
Yeah, so one thing that happens, I know for my Zoom, if I have my camera on, the Zoom going, and I try to open like another tab, a thing pops up that says the CPU usage is too high. And I just looked up what that meant, and it's how much the processor is working. So I think like every single day I have that message pop up, and that causes the Zoom to lag, nothing to load, and then if I try to speak, they can't hear me on the other side.
So again, it is that every year we're buying a new set of Chromebooks too. Dalen's in her senior year. That processor is the oldest processor in the building currently for seniors. I don't know what's happening for freshmen with quote unquote newer or new Chromebooks.
And we did not pick Chromebooks
Correct.
to support hybrid learning or.
Correct.
online
No, that
learning.
wasn't our
wasn't
intent
our
when we
goal.
bought them. And we're, truthfully, again, we're a district that's fortunate and blessed to have them.
Right.
Imagine if we were in this environment without any of that.
Right.
In relation to your second question, can you go ahead and just ask it one more time
Well,
again,
I'm
please?
just wondering, so what enables the teachers who are really
Yeah.
fine, is there a difference based upon what I teach compared to math or literature that makes the difference, or is it what my expertise are, comfort level?
Some of the elective coursework is doing better than the others. What I mean by that is when I take out math, language arts, social sciences, and others, what I mean is art, tech ed, foods, they're not ideal, but what's happening is they can flip the classroom a little easier and that they can have the students learn prior to coming in for their quote unquote lab time, their art time, their kitchen time, etc. It's not perfect by any means. I know any one of those teachers would love to have their kids still 5 days a week, but from their adjustment, it's been a little bit easier. Some of our staff have actually front loaded or changed their sequencing of their schedule so that Wednesdays, as Mark had said, feel like a Friday or feel like a Monday. You have to get the days out of your head and look at it. You have 5 instructional days. Once you get your kids in the right sequence, Wednesdays can be synchronous. And for those teachers who have adjusted to that model, they've had a little bit more success. But also, I think the struggle for our staff is this: if they're not in sequence, they're teaching a face-to-face lesson and prepping for that. They're teaching that hybrid or the digital lesson and they're prepping for that. And then they're also prepping for that Wednesday, which is kind of feeling wonky to them a little bit. If we can find a way for our teachers to, quite honestly, even let go of some more of the essential standards. I don't like saying that, but let go of some of that and the workload on kids. And I'm a teacher, if I'm a social studies teacher teaching economics, if I put together one lesson that works both digitally, face-to-face, or if the student's missing it due to quarantine or other things, I'm able to support my kids a little bit better. That's hard to do though when you're used to teaching at a level where you're at and trying to feel like you're not giving too little or too much. Because if you can read in our survey, there's not enough work for kids and there's too much work for kids. So we have people on both ends of the spectrum still, depending on what classes they have, the rigor of their schedule, all sorts of different dynamics that are a part of that. There's no easy answer with 68 staff who teach all differently and all exceptionally for their right reasons.
It's disheartening.
It's frustrating because I'm a person who likes to plan and always find a way out, so to speak, and I haven't found my way out of the maze yet, but we're close.
It's tough.
Kit, what you just said was my question. Do we need to change our expectations of the content that's taught to create the space for our teachers to feel like they have the time to prepare lessons that are going to connect more and are going to engage our students on their virtual days So they don't feel like they're missing those days. If Wednesday's not working anyways, we can't work at the level that we're working at right
Right.
now and find a change that's gonna fix those things for people.
I agree. The main priorities for me as building principal at this building would be taking care of the stress of our students and the stress of our staff first and foremost. And then third would be to find a way to work with our disconnected kids who this is not working for. It was not working for them even 5 days a week, but we got to do a better job on that end of it. We have to bring that end up. Somehow or another, we have to do a better job with that still. So whether, I know one of the board's suggestions was to just pull Wednesdays off the table and just work with our kids who are behind. That's one opportunity for us to maybe consider that. It's a struggle though to look at a great kiddo like that who deserves an excellent education instead of just 4 days a week, who's going off to great colleges and I'm writing her letters of recommendation and say, you just take Wednesday off, no problem. Would you like Wednesdays off? Yeah. So we're gonna get back to you on it. If you as either individual board members and things have suggestions, I'm always willing to listen. If there's other things that you have and from the community that you hear too, we're willing to listen and hear to those thoughts. We're close to finding ways and solutions and working with Mark on that and his team as well too. We'll continue to keep you up to date.
I just wanted to go back to rotating that hybrid day. Have one group of kids go 3 days a week, 1 week, and the other go 3 days a week, the other week. And having that be more of a face-to-face mental health, just to get them in the classroom a little bit more.
That takes care of kids, doesn't take care of our teachers and the prep time that they need so desperately right now. That's the only, I love that in terms of from a student center, I have to get it where it wins for both still. And at that point, our teachers would have 80 minutes a day to prep and that would be it. We'd have teachers in droves, I think, crying at our doorstep on it, and that would be a worry for me.
The other thought I had is even if you kept it scheduling the same in terms of number of days, what if you staggered them? Cohort A on Monday, B on Tuesday, instead of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, Friday.
We have that in there too. And again, it's a little bit worrisome with contact mitigation.
Yeah, but
I agree with you. It's just, again, that's a challenge, but that's something that you don't have to convince us hardly to think about.
What if you did it where the kids went, and I can see where the downfall would be, but if they had a way to alternate. So sometimes Dalen is not the second half of the week, but she's the first half of the week. And it's, like I don't know how it works exactly. I mean, you have potentially a 7-day stretch where some kids aren't there, but somebody might get four consecutive learning days in school, and then they're not behind. I'm sure it's probably not. There's something you probably thought of or considered, but
we consider that too. One of the hiccups, like you already mentioned, with the 7 days. The other is then your kids are even more off, and unless you're sequentially in your instruction, both digitally and face-to-face, your kids will be off more than 4 days.
There is no good answer.
You're good math, yeah. Mr. Tuchtenham.
I have a lot of confidence in you guys talking to your teachers every day and the students and the parents and the families, and your own experience as professionals that we're probably doing the best we can. And we can sit and think up lots of new ways of doing this. But as I mentioned last week, we're not the only district going through this. And I wish we had better forums to share what's going on in other districts so we didn't have to stop and sort of think about how we invent this scratch. I'm looking forward to the sessions. We won't have until January that WASB will have for us, because I'm hoping there'll be lots of sessions that we're going to learn from as board members what's going on in other districts. So anyway, I would encourage us, and we may want to facilitate this ourselves come next summer if we want to host some workshops for area schools to do feedback on this. Jennifer and I were talking about this the other day. We've hosted the teacher academies and stuff in the past. There's a lot to learn from this. And there's a lot to learn right now if we could just reach out and be in connection with them. So I know to the extent that you can, you're in touch with other principals, but I don't know a solution to that, but I think there's a lot to learn from what other districts are experiencing right now too.
only comment I like that idea too. Just what I've observed in my life over the last 7 months is if somebody called me and said, you know, hey, would you be interested in making a presentation about what's worked well for you? I still feel like I'm treading water personally, to the point where I can't imagine if somebody called Kit and Mark or Jamie and they said, do you want to present at the WASB, you know, that you're going to be real excited about that. And also how would you prep for it? And, you know, I just feel like everyone has to be in the same situation of treading water. You know, it's one thing to compare notes, but I don't think anyone can definitively say nobody's further ahead than us in terms of how long they've been dealing with this. So that's my only fear, is that we're, you know, you're also waiting 4 months for something or 3 months for something that I don't know. I just don't have a whole lot of hope we're going to get something like that.
There'll be
Unfortunately.
sessions out there on it, and part of it is just going to be what they're trying, or even what I would love to see is just some roundtable conversations where board members from various schools are together on Zoom talking about this. I think we will eventually get there, but you guys are there every day, dealing with this every day. So I wish there were better forums for us to be learning what's going on. So.
I do get a lot of phone calls from other admin currently right now, and I have a pretty strong network. A lot of the schools are stressed out because they've been in fully online formats, and they're wanting to get to where we're at.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, you have to be careful with what you wish for in certain cases, and I'm very honest with them about that there are trade-offs both ways. Again, I would say Mark would concur, it's probably easier to be, obviously ideal to be face-to-face 5 days a week. It's probably, from a prep standpoint, a little bit better to just be fully online than where we are now. And so when schools call us and ask us what we're doing as a high school, I caution them to a certain extent, but at the same time, I understand why they're looking at it. Because it's always, the grass is greener on the other side always in most cases. And again, we're so thankful through our survey up and down, everybody's just happy to be in school. In one capacity or another, they're happy to be engaged and in school.
So we need to move on, but I want
Yes.
to ask a question first about high school. So we didn't hear anything about how this is working for Renaissance students. Is there anything additional that you would say about that population?
They are running, I believe, in every other day AE, and with their smaller cohort, they are experiencing some great success with that every other day format, as Mike had mentioned. Again, being that they have about 40 to 45 students there every other day, give or take, and they've split that 45 in half. They have a far better student to staff ratio, and the students are feeling quite supported there when I talk to Chris Silver and Terrell Gratz.
They're also focusing on the core classes on the face-to-face days and more of the elective courses
Correct.
on the at-home days.
So their size and then their alternating schedule provides some additional opportunities to them.
Very much so.
Okay. Well, you have our confidence, both of you, and I'm sure you'll continue to struggle, and you know where we are any time you need us.
We'll see you
But
next week.
Yes, so, but now you talked really about grades 6 through 12. Do we have principals who would like to talk about pre-K through 5? Or that could be something for later on. No?
Gave us a little update a week ago. Things are going well with students and staff. Well is not without its own challenges. Again, our staff are being asked to do more than ever before, and we'd be remiss not to point that out. Is there a new set of challenges? Yes, but we're very glad that we have our kids in school 5 days a week.
Okay, thank you. So, really, Kit and Mark have already addressed D, the potential for shifting learning environments and some of this proactive planning. There isn't a specific plan at the present time, but they will come back to us when there is. So at this point, now we will turn to letter D related to the fall sports postseason spectator guidelines. And I think that this would be Jamie and Kit and Raleigh.
Yes, Raleigh has stayed apprised of where we're at with fall sports now nearing the end of their season. It's post-season time, and so the WIAA has some established guidelines for how those tournament games would look. And I guess in a nutshell, without stepping on your toes, Raleigh, I would say my understanding is from a spectator standpoint, WIAA says if you're the host school, you have the highest seed, higher seed gets to be the host. You will provide 4 tickets for every player on your team, and so too will you provide for the opposing team. And that's different than what we've been doing. We've been doing 2 tickets for each player on our teams. So we wanted to be transparent, talk about that. We are administratively not recommending that we would choose to not be a host, which is an option. If you choose to not be a host because you don't like the spectator guidelines from the WIAA, it then gets deferred to the opposing team, who then has a choice to say, we'll live with those spectator guidelines 4 and 4, or we don't like it either. And then it goes back to the original host team. Is that a fair statement?
Yep. Yep.
And so,
and then you could do either your guidelines, or if you modify it a little bit. It's a back and forth. WI wants to sell a train tickets. Excuse me for sitting my feet.
So how many other school districts have the same plan that we do? Of the people who.
Right now, the Big Rivers Conference, okay, so that would be, don't take the Eau Claire schools, but Menominee, Rice Lake, Chippewa Falls, Hudson, and us. We all started with where we only had parents, home parents, all right? So basically 2, it could be 4 in a family situation. And it's only home, they couldn't go to visiting games. So our people can go to Menominee couldn't come here. That's been a little bit of a battle. Not so much, I like to think, not so much actually with our people. I haven't heard too many complaints. We've had people show up here from other schools, and we shoot them. Or at other schools, it's happening also. More so outside, we can control the inside a lot easier. The outside, sometimes, like in our soccer field, is very hard to control people. Overall, I think it's gone pretty well. People would love to go and watch their kids go away games, but they understand we've been doing the streaming thing, which has been an experience all within its own, to try to get that arranged, not only for the varsity, because this goes all the way down. All right, so the JV, JV2 freshman teams, likewise, only the home parents. So to find filmers for all those games and everything, we've done the best we can. A couple bucks along the way. Now we get to tournaments, and last week, this was sprung on us last week. Okay, if you want to host, that's fine, but you got to sell 4 to 5 tickets. So we got rid of the 5 number right away. We're just trying to do the math with 4. Just so you realize what that will do is right now at a volleyball game that we're having right now, varsity volleyball game, there's 12 kids on the team. So we have about 25 parents there. If we were going to go with their 4 tickets, take our 12, their 12, 24, my math is 96, would have 96 people. Yeah.
So to stick with that scenario of volleyball, we currently right now do not have the bleachers pulled out. We're able to space 25 people around the balcony with appropriate distancing and masking and so on. If we were to host a tournament, we would then pull out the bleachers, include using the balcony, but now we would space people in the bleachers.
For tonight, I did an experiment on the one side because it was only our people. We did pull out one side to see how it would look. And they're spread out very nicely, but now that's 25.
So let's just imagine that we say, you know what, we made this decision about 2 spectators per player on purpose. That's what we're going to stick to. how many other school districts would be in that same position? It sounds like all of them?
I would say no,
No, okay.
all right. It'll vary. This is a topic that comes up all the time. And the problem too is that first round, because they made it more of a regional, the first round will probably be the same schools as fifth plan. All right.
Oh, so you're
The second round might be even more. Once you get to a third round, and we're talking basically volleyball and soccer. Now you might start playing teams from the Wausau area or Marshfield area, so on and so forth. The WIA, the one thing they've done, there's no neutral sites, except for the state championship. So somebody will host every game. So the game before state usually was a neutral site, now it would be a host. I will tell you right now that we will be the #1 seed in volleyball going as long as we go. All right, because just tradition and how good we are. Soccer will have one home game and we'll be on the road. Football, we don't know what that's even gonna look like yet. First you got all of it. But those are the two that would be. My concern for not only myself, but for all of you, is if we are that #1 seed in volleyball, where we could host 4 games, and we say no for the right reasons, what is the blowback on all of us? And, you know, we've lived with that before, but I just want to be upfront with that. Because some people would say, well, play hard to get that far. Now we can't host because you guys won't take enough people. I'm just being honest.
Yep.
I don't have a preference either way. I think I'm going to be there one way or the other.
So for process now, there isn't going to be a good solution, just like so many of the decisions that we've been faced with lately. But it sounds to me like administrators are suggesting that we say, yes, we're going to host, and we understand, we don't have to like it, but we understand that that means that we will be welcoming 4 spectators potentially per athlete.
That's correct.
Okay.
So
So let's react to that
Yeah.
as a board.
I think that at a certain point, we always have someone to say, well, we're doing this because someone says. Even as a school district, we do that. Well, Pierce County is saying the CDC regulations are, we're adhering to this or that. And the same thing is kind of going on here now with sports. And I can't help but think or want to ask those parents, are you comfortable with this? Okay, it may be the conference's decision, it might be the school board saying it's okay. We're concerned about student safety all the time. We get, over the years, we've got comments from parents all the time about student safety, about all kinds of things. Parents of our players, are you comfortable with this kind of environment, given the fact that it'll be 4 games and it'll be that many people in the room? I'm not asking for an answer to that right now, but I think that needs to be asked of them, and not just if the school board said it's okay, well, it must be okay then for us to do this. As a parent, and your responsibility as a parent, are you okay with this? And as a player, are you okay with this? So I think that's another dimension to this. I'll go along with your recommendation. I'm real uncomfortable with this because I think we've had a really good setup so far and it's been working.
And please don't be confused that I'm recommending, I'm informing.
Okay.
So, right. So one of the challenges is we've got a playoff game coming right up, right? On
Yeah,
Thursday,
Thursday, so this has got to be a decision.
we've got to decide tonight.
And I apologize for the short
Well,
notice,
no,
but
you
we just
didn't
got
know.
notified last week.
Yep,
so.
this is how things are working. But I think, Alan, to your question, we can't do a scientific survey about what all of the parents think, but Jamie, do you have a sense?
Yeah,
of
you know,
parents'
I would say based on feedback that I have received, that if we were to conduct a survey, that the board would hear a resounding message from parents to say, I'm glad that you made the decision to allow going forward with our kids that earned this seed to allow us to host. I'm glad that you didn't defer that to put our team on the road. So that being said, we all know that we have COVID risks that are always the balance that we're trying to make these decisions on. I don't want to minimize that and only suggest that the reason to do so is because the parents said so, or the athletes said so, because they would. I strongly believe that both the parents and the players and the coaches would say, yes, we would ask you to please approve going forward. That's good to know. It's good that we're listening. At the same time, we still have to manage the COVID concerns. So if we were to talk about the COVID concerns for a second, what do we guess is the number one risk for us hosting? Is that we're bringing people from outside of our community. We're increasing the numbers to our stadium, if you will, whether it's soccer outside or the gym inside. What would we speculate would occur if we say no to that risk? Then the choice is for the other team to decide. Let's just speculate that they would say, yeah, we'll host. What advanced mitigation did we gain from that? One could say, well, you don't have people from outside our community stopping at Quick Trip or the local restaurant or whatever. Fair enough. Would we, as a parent group, not travel to that opposing location and watch our son or daughter play in that tournament game? I would speculate most would. So on balance, what are we causing greater risk with COVID? Probably. But on balance, would it greatly reduce those risks if we were to defer and play on the road instead?
Well, I understand that. I'm just asking a different question. And I would ask the question differently from the parents. So if the parents resoundingly would say, yes, our kids have earned this and we think they should go and we should host it, that's not the question I'm asking. I'm saying, I get it, they deserve it, they ought to be able to do this. But as a parent, is that the reason you want them there? Or are you advocating for them to be there because you think it's safe for them to be there? Not that they ought to be there because they've won the tournament or they've won their games and those kinds of things. But as a parent, I want us to host it, and I want this arrangement because I think it's safe for my kid. And I'm raising that as a different question here for parents to consider, that it's not that the school board said it was safe, the conference said it was safe, okay? You as a parent just have to decide that you're advocating for this, not because your kid won a lot of games, it's because I think as a parent, this is safe, and what you come up with is safe. And if the parents can say that, great, but they've got to think of it that way. And I think we as a board need to consider it that way, at least.
Don't you think they've already given that implicit decision because their girls are already playing?
I would hope so.
Yeah.
But this is different. This is more fans.
To me, this wouldn't increase the risk to the players almost in any, I mean, if I'm a player in that, it's unlikely I'm coming within 50 feet of anybody who's in the stands. I think it's probably a bigger risk for attendees, for the people who are going to be there. I would agree with Jamie that if you lined up all the people, I'd be surprised if you didn't get of 96 people. I'd be surprised if you got more than one or two that share much concern about it. Honestly, I think they would be in line. If you snapped your fingers and said yes, they'd be out there right now.
Raleigh, is this just varsity? It's just varsity, right? What about, I think the athletes would opt into it, and I think their parents would opt into it. I agree with that 100%. But if our students are going to other communities or we're increasing their risk in any way, shape, or form, I think we should consider those students have to be virtual and not coming back into in-person school for a week or 2 weeks or something like that. I'm worried about the students that aren't making the choice to be in the sport, that are in school.
Are you talking about fans?
I'm talking about our students that are here. I'm talking about our student athletes. If you're traveling to a higher place or whatever to across the state to the east side of the state or that type of thing. I just don't want, I think there is a higher risk in that. And I think that people are gonna opt into it, and I can live with that. I also would rather have control of the mitigation efforts than have it going to another community, right? So I would be much more comfortable with us hosting. But I would like to at least see the discussion about the probably 95% of the other students, that their risk is also increased because of the travel of our student athletes.
Is that travel any different from what they're already doing now by what we're already allowing by participating in volleyball? I suppose it could be if you're going farther away.
Other than a different area.
I think you're going further away.
I think for volleyball, which is main, and again, we're talking basically for volleyball, we're gonna be at home. If we say, okay, we're gonna be home up to the state tournament. The state tournament has changed now, where it's gonna be a one-day affair and only one division. So Division I is gonna play, there's gonna be 4 schools, they're gonna go, they said that Wausau, Wisconsin Rapids are 2 of the places. I don't know exactly where we'll end up. And then they play one round at 1 o'clock and then come back and play the championship at 6 o'clock. So it'll be a one day out of this area for our volleyball team. I'm sorry, that's cocky on my part. Knowing who else is playing it. They can only let me down. Soccer could be a little bit different. The first game would be home. The second game will probably be in Hudson. Okay, next Tuesday. Then after that, we're not sure. We'll be at someplace else if we were to beat Hudson. If they beat Hudson, they could be the.
So one of the points, Cindy, that you made is, if they come to our house, we can be much more careful and know what the standards are going to be. I think that there's some virtue in that. So that the board has a clear sense of where we're going with this. This is under an informational item because this was ultimately going to be an administrative decision. We are simply providing feedback so that they have some direction.
I will tell you, and I'm not patting myself on the back because I can't reach that part. But if you were to go in the gym right now, in the bleachers, you would see yellow tape put on the bleachers that people had to sit in. And that's what we did for football a couple of weeks ago. Soccer is a little bit more difficult. We don't have the bleachers. They sit in locker chairs, they're spread out. I can guarantee you that your AD will be separated as much as possible, if this is okay.
As much as possible, and forgive me, I made an error. There is a spot where we can take action if we would choose to as a board. We can make a decision because on B, it is listed that we could take action. So what is the board's thinking?
Well, I feel more comfortable if we're hosting that we allow the 4 people. If we travel, I have a little more concern, just like Cindy does, but let's cross that bridge.
We don't get control over that though.
Yeah. Through this week, I mean, we can meet again next week as well.
Yeah.
But through this week, I think we're pretty safe. It's all gonna be river balls. Thursday night and Saturday for volleyball, soccer will be Saturday. All 3 of those games are in river balls. Next week, it could change a little bit.
Can I ask, Raleigh, does the gym have like a listed capacity? Is it like a building that has a?
Yeah, it's not as much as you think. There's, in the lower bowl, you can sit 1,000.
Yeah.
Up on top, you can sit another 400.
Yeah.
And then you got standing room also with the running track.
So I guess the point I would make is, I don't see where this would be out of compliance with anything that's been laid out for any other establishment. There's nothing that could prevent a truckload of kids from driving to Green Bay if they wanted to at any point in time. I think 100 people and under, you could be reasonably without getting close to, if you take that 4-person group and say, this is one cohort of people, I would have a reasonable expectation that we could make it at least 10, if not more feet from any other group that's in the gym. I wouldn't have any reservation about it.
We're closer now.
Yes.
Around this table.
Yeah.
And they do have rules. I mean, we have to be 12 feet away
Yeah.
from any player. So,
Yeah.
so that.
I don't
They could
see,
sit up higher in the bleachers.
I don't see any increased risk for the kids to be participating in the event, honestly, and I don't think when we're talking about whether it's a football stadium or a, you know, even soccer outdoors or the gym, I just don't see there being a whole lot of issue distancing people to the level that's expected anywhere else.
But we're changing our tune though. And that's where, and it's gonna have probably some implications now for winter sports, because we were saying 2 for football outdoors. Now we're saying 4 and opposing team having 4 indoors. And so if 2 was enough, now we're saying 4, where does this go? So that, the only reason I'm raising it is we're now changing our tune. If we were comfortable and we thought 2 was the limit before, now we're at 4. Is somebody else gonna tell us later, 6 for moving indoors? What are the implications for winter sports? I don't know. Like I say, I wouldn't oppose this. I'm not gonna necessarily oppose this. I'm just saying, we gotta think about what we're saying and what we're doing in this.
Yeah, I think it's a slippery slope, Alan. I agree with you. It's a slippery slope to accelerating risk, to increasing risk. And that's why, I mean, frankly, that's why our country is the worst in the world at controlling this pandemic, is because of these kinds of decisions, I think. Because I agree, we can comply with the rules technically. But every time we do this, we're increasing risk, and it's a statistics game. You know, nobody can say, well, if you do it this much, then that's going to happen. It's a statistics game, but eventually we can't, you know, we test it enough, it's going to happen.
And if we do
And I
this,
also think the logic of, well, I appreciate your logic, Jamie, and I agree with it actually, that if we don't host, well, then another school hosts, they're going to go there, and we're not really reducing any risk. But to me, it's like, you say, well, we're not going to allow smoking on campus. Well, they're going to go smoke off campus, so we might as well just allow it, because they're going to smoke anyway. That's not the right way to make that decision to me. I'm not reducing anybody's smoking, but I'm still not going to, I feel like it's a leadership role to make that decision for how we want, you know, the way we want that to be pervade.
I feel like I don't want to make the decision to expand it. I'm uncomfortable making the decision to expand the number because we've won. Okay, that shouldn't be why we expand the number. It's because we think we're no more at risk. The students are no more at risk than they were with just 2 parents in the room. That should be why we're deciding that this is student safety. I don't know what the campus. We may be totally underestimating this, and we could have maybe let the kids all have 20. I don't know. So.
Well,
Raleigh, I may have missed this in all of this conversation. The WIA seems to have tied the school district's hands on how we have to host if we're going to host. Is there any recourse on going back to the WIA and saying, you know, we've been doing this, it's been working? Is there any recourse there?
Email's already been sent. I mean, I even requested, okay, here's where we're at, all right? You're asking us to go to here. How about if we just had 2 parents from each school? They said, well, they'd go back to the other school first. They could do 4 and 4, yeah. Otherwise, come back and you talk to us about that. So they're gonna get as many people as they can into their thing once they're there. All right. So if they come to us first, can you do 4 apiece? No. They go to Beltonville. Can you do 4 apiece? No. Well, River Falls, what can you do? All right. It would go 2 and 2.
The odds of that happening, though, we're in a state that only half the people even think this is a real thing.
Yeah, I mean.
Right? I mean, so the odds of another team saying, no, we're not gonna host because we don't want 8 people in the gym is virtually 0. Right? So
I will say that it's pretty split right now, at least in our conference, but the next conference over, Middle Border, has been allowing more people than we have. They're actually small. But you're right. It's an ongoing discussion. I don't know if it's the right answer.
I think if we're gonna say no to the spectator thing, then we need to say that if another school is gonna have more than 2 people, that we are not gonna travel our team. Because I think to take them and throw them into that situation at another community, that does not make any sense to me.
That's greater risk.
Right, exactly. I think we're increasing their risk by throwing them into another community. I don't like that at all. I would much rather say if we're gonna host and our administrative team feels like there's an increased risk of exposure, that hold those athletes out of school for 2 days, have them go virtual. We have 150 kids that are virtual because they're sick or have close contacts or whatever anyways. Keep the exposure away from our other students because they're not choosing to play that sport. So I would rather see us do that than say no to the 4 spectators.
So I think I'll land with you, Cindy, from the standpoint that I really don't like this. I really don't like it, but I'm willing to support it primarily for me because I think we have more control over what the environment will be for both our athletes and spectators if they come to our house compared to if we decide to go on the road. But I also hope that you could extend our dissatisfaction to the WIAA, that we don't like this. We don't appreciate that they've essentially done a power play around this board's ability to make a decision that is really in our best interest. We don't appreciate it. So.
Well, maybe it puts us all in the middle.
Well,
Yeah,
right, and maybe you could have suggested them that we would expect better leadership from them when it comes to winter sports than they've demonstrated on fall sports. So, is there a general, we don't have to like it, is there a general consensus that we will support the administration going forward with this in the way that they feel is the best interest of our athletes, figuring out if there's exposure, what that means for students, and placing it in their hands, even if we don't like it?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I may just add one last comment for clarity, both for the board and anyone listening at home. The basis of the administration, my recommendation is not driven solely by the example that I gave related to whether or not if we defer, our parents and our players are going to travel anyway. That's not the standalone issue. If we were to develop a rubric and a list of all things that should be considered in this, I would add that to the list of there's COVID risk factors no matter how we do this. I would add this to the list of whether or not we think that we decided to go forward with fall sports to begin with. I certainly would not recommend that we say, but now we're going to bow out of the tournament, and make the list of many things that are considered. COVID risk is paramount and at the top of the list, and that is the number one thing that makes this the most difficult conversation. So I just don't want to be pigeonholed into suggesting that the rationale that the superintendent said was based on one factor and one factor alone. That's not the case.
Could I, the other thing that I would ask is, it's still a fluid situation too, right? I mean, we could make a decision today, let's say, and it could wildly change, and we could pivot then, right?
Tomorrow morning could be a different story.
Right.
Yep. Which is another reason then for granting you the ability to make this decision on our behalf. For clarification, everybody, there is no longer a recommendation that seniors or the marching band attend the homecoming game. That will limit the potential for more people there. There is the possibility of the dance team and the cheerleaders going out to halftime for, I don't know, how many minutes is that, 12 or something like that?
Yeah, 15.
At 15,
The
okay.
dads will be out there, they'll do their 2 minutes.
And this is outside.
It's outside.
And the only parents could be there just 2, and they would be on the track, and then they would leave. They wouldn't even be there for the whole game. That's my understanding, right?
They'll come in about 3 minutes before the halftime. That's the thought process.
All right. It bears reiterating that there is no pleasure for anybody on this board to be limiting opportunities for kids.
I was just curious why there was the change to no longer even considering having seniors there. Like, I'm just not sure, like what happened.
Kit can help with this. I would say that when a board agenda is published, we have to do our very best to be very transparent to the public to let them know issues to be discussed. And as late as last week, we were still discussing whether or not we'd be comfortable in bringing a recommendation to the school board that says we'll do marching band to allow them to do their halftime performance. And we're considering whether or not there could be seniors allowed to go to that game. Would we do a senior lottery to limit the number of seniors and so on? And to be very honest, in thinking about that over the weekend, we spoke again today, and I guess the words I used to both Raleigh and Kit was frankly getting cold feet over opening more doors for decreasing our mitigation efforts and encouraging not just more people to attend that game, but frankly, we also know some of the things that happened both before the game and after the game that would encourage more group gatherings. And we're fully aware that whether you're talking about a hybrid day, there's kids that are going to each other's houses. We are fully aware that on a homecoming night, there will be kids gathering at a home watching the live streamed game. Those are out of our control, but the things that we can control, we felt like we're already, you just heard a half an hour of conversation about we're already going farther than we all care to with our spectators allowed in tournament play. And we need to try to not completely open up the floodgates and go too far and too extreme with some of our recommendations. And we decided not to do those two things for those reasons. Safety. You don't like it?
No. I think that's just, yeah, I don't think anyone in the senior class necessarily likes it. There's actually a petition that was made today before the meeting started that already had over 100 signatures, just because we want to be able to support our boys and have some experience in this crazy time. We haven't been able to attend any sporting events, and we thought maybe the one that matters, that has a whole week dedicated to it, would be a possibility for seniors who will never get to experience this again to be able to go and watch their final football game for the season.
Yeah, those were all of the exact reasons why it was being entertained as part of the thought process. We were laying that out there to advocate for the seniors. I mean, we fully understand that. If the board feels differently on that topic, now would be a great time to hear some conversation on that.
Regretful, but I agree.
So we are allowing band at halftime.
Band is
Or not.
Dance, yes.
Dance,
Yes.
not band.
Band had a thing last Saturday
Yeah.
out here. And we had brought it forward to them, and even up to today, they were talking, it's supposed to be 34 degrees, so
Sure.
it doesn't work real well for band.
It was a weather thing.
Yeah.
How many,
Okay.
how many seniors are there, just out of curiosity? 250?
250.
Ready to move on, everybody? We've taken a lot of time on informational items, so now at this point, we'll move to action.
Thank you.
Yes, it's something else.
Good luck, Raleigh.
So at this point, do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the September 21st regular Board of Education meeting, the minutes from the special Board of Education meeting on September 28th, special meeting minutes from October 5th, as well as special meeting minutes from October 12th, bills that have been submitted for payment, as well as employment recommendations? Is there a motion, please?
Move.
Thank you, Todd. Is there a second? Thank you, Amy. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. And now we will move to our our weekly conversation about the hybrid learning environment. Mr. Benson?
So if you would like for me to go back to any of these slides, I'm more than happy to, but you've seen the same series of slides several times, so I'm gonna kind of fast forward. Get to the bottom line here. I consider this to be the bottom line. Where we're at in our district, the status report. So again, you can see the numbers here. Staff are not able to work because they've been identified as having been in close contact. Then isolation, staff not able to work because they are seeking a COVID diagnosis or a member of their household seeking medical diagnosis. 5. This one, I pointed out again last time that staff currently positive or active and or have tested positive and now returned to work continues to be less than 10. So that's the one that is more of a cumulative indicator. These others are current snapshots. Student absences. Out due to COVID symptoms, 24 out due to household members having symptoms or waiting results, and close contacts. Fewer than 10 students tested positive or have returned. I did talk with AZ Snyder again today. Try to do that no less than every Monday. Usually I talk to her 2 or 3 times a week. I will tell you that things that you, I'm sure, already know. Wisconsin as a state is not doing well. Right now, Pierce County and St. Croix County looks on paper like they're trending in a little better position than things were looking. Still not good, but the bigger concern with that, back to the statewide picture, and as you look at all of the counties bordering us, around us, speculation would have it that things need to get better in a hurry in surrounding counties, in our own counties, and across the state. It's concerning. The statewide picture is extremely concerning. A couple of things that we've already discussed. The recommendation is to make no change at this time to our current hybrid environment, no change to fall or winter sports. The 2 newbies here, I put down WIAA postseason. We just spent a lot of time talking about that. And now the one thing we have not yet talked about, and that is that we're all wanting to have opportunities for our kids that, in this case, for chorus and band in grade 6-12, the best it gets right now in chorus is their humming. And we're not playing musical instruments in larger group settings. And so our MEN team has been working with the chorus department and talking about some options, and we continue to consult with Pierce County. And really the goal is a 13-foot rule in the cases of playing music or singing instrument or in chorus, along with wearing masks, and yes, even those that would play instruments would wear a mask with a slit for their instrument to be able to join their lips. Use the auditorium for chorus. We exceed the 13-foot rule in doing that. Increasing air exchange. There's some important information there that they don't bring one group in back to back with another, that you'd have air exchange take place in those rooms before bringing in another group. Bell covers on the instrument and limit the time of performance. So we're continuing to look at all of this and want to move some from where we are currently at to having more students be able to perform their music. But we're inching along slowly and trying to make sure that we're fulfilling some of those things that we know need to be a unique mitigation efforts associated with chorus and band. So any questions on that?
For band at least, was there anything really in place before? Because I know that we were already wearing masks and social distancing while playing and had bell covers. Was something like this already in place, or is this new since we're gonna have to move inside? As more like a,
It's the inside.
Yeah.
okay.
Inside versus being outdoors. Weather, obviously, that's causing a different direction as well.
One question is, it talks about no change for fall or winter athletics. We've not really talked about winter athletics before in a formal way.
Yep, thank
So
you.
at some point, we do need to talk about that and masks for athletes if we were to go ahead with this.
So right now, the current recommendation, again, from the WIAA is that they have not come out with any other guidance related to winter sports other than what they had originally published. As Raleigh had reported to you back in maybe mid-August, I guess. And what is in that board packet, go back to look at it, it shortened the sports seasons. Again, no change from the WIAA at this juncture, and nor are we, as an administrative team, suggesting tonight that we would not continue to move forward with fall sports, as apparently the rest of, I won't say the rest of the state, but in agreement with where the WIAA is currently at, there's no recommended change.
So in other words, WIA is putting back in the districts to decide that essentially, you know.
Sound familiar?
Yep.
That's funny that they'll let us decide that, but then they won't let us decide how many people can come in.
Is there a date by when that decision would have to be made for the winter?
We're not hearing any date that the WIAA has committed to with any change whatsoever.
Okay.
But in terms of practice schedule for our athletes, the winter sports, when does that start, or is there?
It varies a little bit by sport. Ballpark, I think if I said, yeah, mid-November, some start as late perhaps as right around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, you know, I very much want the students to play and that type of thing, but it gets, some of those winter sports are much closer to contact, and of course you don't have the, you know, the outdoor element of it. So wrestling comes to mind, basketball comes to mind, as far as being very close, you know, not face shields involved and that type of thing. Probably want to find out what other schools are doing and what we should do, because I think there's a lot more possibilities with, a lot more risk, I should say, with those sports than football, for instance, or cross country.
Jamie, are we talking about going forward with the band and choir changes now? Or is that for future consideration, or?
Soon. Would you prefer to vote on that as a board member?
Not necessarily vote, I'm just wondering about the timeline, one, and what the process for that will be. And it feels like we're opening things up as Wisconsin is flaming. It feels like there should be some sort of community responsibility in getting numbers going in the right direction for a few weeks at a time before we start opening up more opportunities. As much as I appreciate band and choir and sports and blah, 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 all of that, it feels like there's no responsibility put on the community and where our numbers are when we make those changes in the middle of a hot time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. The last communication that I gave to our music department happened to be as recent as this afternoon, and the form of an email. And when I had on this slide outlined the things that are being considered, from air exchange in the room to bell covers to using the auditorium where we space people out at 13 feet and so on, my last communication this afternoon was, sorry, I hate to keep dragging the decision out, but please appreciate this is a big deal. And I'm personally not ready yet, largely due to the same thing you just said, to comfortably move ahead. I don't want us for sure to go from what I call 0 to 60. That if there's a way for us, now that the weather is causing us to have to be indoors, if there's a way for us to make some progress that goes beyond humming in some fashion with some groups of students, chorus and or band, but I don't want to see us go from 0 to 60. And I'm continuing to debate and talk with Mark and Kit and our music folks about what do we know factually, what are the extra concerns that are associated with aerosols in relation to singing and playing instruments, what do we know from the research that is sound evidence that these mitigation efforts work, and try to move forward not from 0 to 60, but maybe find a way for us to try things, shorten the amount of time. There's recommendations right now that say 6 feet's good enough unless it's trombone, 9 feet. 6 feet for all others. I'm saying, no way, can't be done. Recommendations are 30-minute, no more than 30 minutes of play time or sing time. I'm saying, I don't know that we can live with 30 minutes. And so I wanted to be transparent to talk with the board about it, but at the same time, as I told the group in my email today, we'll try and make a decision no later than Wednesday of this week, but we might have to, before we reach whatever that decision is, we might have to get the troops back together again and talk about some things.
Earlier today, I mentioned to Jamie that there was a very interesting article in the Star Tribune about research that's happening between the University of Minnesota Engineering Department and the Minnesota Orchestra to be measuring aerosols. One of the things, there were several interesting things. So the overriding thing I took away with it is how little we know. How little we know. So I would encourage us to be, people can be making recommendations, but I think we need to be making sure that what's it based on and how much evidence is there to really demonstrate that we know what we're talking about.
It's a Colorado study that was done over the summer. They had a kind of a round one release of their data from this aerosol study, and then a second round, and those results have not yet been peer reviewed, and they're still considered somewhat tentative. They were established to give some very preliminary kind of research, but in agreement with what Stacy said, the jury is very much still out on what's reasonable and what's not.
And it appears to vary by instrument and by the number of layers of filter on the bell and so forth.
Clarinets have fewer key covers. Flute is a different animal. The trombone is a different animal. And so there is a lot of complexity to what limited research there is and what we're trying to study and learn from that research.
Is there consistent research on singing and choir?
Well, the one that's the study that's most often referenced as the red flag is that, I forget if it was state of Washington, was it early summer or May, when there was 80 members in a chorus without any masks on singing, and of 80 people, I think 75 of them got COVID, something like that. And there's been other unmasked, 6 inches apart rather than 6 feet or more, or 13. And so just as limited is the singing, although one thing that's notable with singing is that it is recognized as being more risky than instruments with bell covers.
I know that there are some colleges where students are singing with masks. So,
Say that again, Stacy, I'm sorry.
there are some colleges, I mean, I think singing is understood to be more aerosol producing than instruments. And that there are some students who are singing with masks on
At universities.
Yep,
at the
got it.
college level.
I think our choir at the high school does wear masks, like singing masks. I
They're
think,
special.
yeah,
But they're not singing.
no, but I think they have like masks for it.
So, is there more discussion to be had around letter B?
So can I ask, I don't have any more discussion. I just would ask, we talked about kind of just leaving it up to an administrative recommendation. I guess, I mean, is it that, are that you comfortable with that, I guess, or are you looking for the board to vote on it? I guess that would be my question.
The way that I posted the agenda was to allow for, if the board would prefer to vote on it, it's listed on the agenda as consideration and action. And so to the extent that the board chooses to vote on any of these items, I tried to itemize them again ahead of time. I'm fine with either approach. I think that I want to be sure that the board is never left with a perception that somehow I think that I'm all-knowing and that I have the power to make these decisions. And so to whatever extent the board is inclined to prefer to vote, I'm deferring to you to make that decision.
Is there anybody who who would like to be able to? Anybody have an interest in voting on that, or we'll continue as we? I want to make one clarification, and that's that I specifically remember when we decided about fall sports, that we said that that was not necessarily going to be an indication about what we would decide for winter sports. So I think that's important to keep track of too. All right, anything else? Everybody ready to move on? So we will talk about the personnel meeting and the potential to approve the revised virtual e-school staffing plan. Amy, do you want to talk? And Dave?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Is that else?
Yep, that'd be
I
great.
think most of the board was at our meeting on last Monday. So ultimately, we went through an update to our staffing plan from what we decided in August to now in October where we're at and where we are at. And the nuts and bolts are, we're going to add a Myron Middle School virtual preschool program instructor or teacher. And we're adding in the net of about a half of an FTE of a virtual preschool program instructor at the high school. We're adding some paraprofessional support at the high school and academic tutors, which were part of the original plan, but now we've actually hired. And one point of clarification is we are still going to have that third middle high school permanent substitute, and we have that person starting tomorrow. So we now have a full complement of middle high school and elementary permanent substitutes.
Thank you. So is there a motion to approve the revised virtual e-school staffing plan?
So moved.
Thank you, Amy. A second?
Second.
Thank you, Cindy. Any further discussion, questions of Dave?
I have one question.
Yes?
We won't have any sense for the number of students that will be their second term and for a few more weeks, right? Because I would hate to see us shift too much staffing if the numbers are really gonna swing back in 3 weeks.
We'll know, I mean, this is the elementary level or at time.
That's right, it's not till semester. Yep.
And the other piece too is we've thought about that, and we have some contingencies in place. If we had a wild swing back to in-person learning, and again, if you look at the makeup of our virtual preschool, most of them come from support teaching positions. So if we need to, we can get them back in and it won't have a negative effect on class sizes on either side.
Okay.
I think the design of who is in those positions allows us to be less worried there.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I want to commend the plan for being able to have that much flexibility built within it. Because if it didn't, we would not be able to allow our families to have the ability to be moving at these term breaks. So that's a really significant contribution that you've made in this planning. So, anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Now, if you remember, we had the hearing at the beginning related to our potential waiver to the DPI. So at this point, do we have a motion to approve the DPI waivers for the Educator Effectiveness Evaluation System and the hours of instruction?
So moved.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Bob. Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. So everybody remembers that at the annual meeting, we had a predicted tax levy that that was suggested would be the tax levy that we would be voting on tonight. As it all turns out, that tax levy is coming in lower than it was predicted. So at this point, I'll take a motion and then we can have discussion. We have a motion to approve the 2020-2021 tax levy as presented. And I should have had, which page? It's this document, everybody. Okay,
I'll move to approve.
thank you, Todd.
Second. Go ahead.
Thank you, Amy, for seconding it. So one of the things that we can point out is that property value has increased overall, even though across the district, which means that we are spreading out the dollars that we are levying over a broader number of taxing entities. Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. Do we have any proposed or suggested items for future board meeting agendas?
Stacy, I've got one.
Okay.
I was, and my assignment this year, one of my assignments is the River Falls 4C. They had a meeting last week. Just in my conversation from there, it made me think that it would be good for us at a future meeting here sometime to have a discussion, because we've got some newer board members since we launched that program, have a discussion about how the money works with that, how, why we've decided what we're doing with the local schools that we do it with, preschools that we do it with, and just a general discussion on how that works, so we're all familiar, because it's a different funding model than the rest, and when I'm sitting there trying to explain it, I'm not always comfortable explaining it. I think it'd be good for all of us to have that kind of conversation.
I think it's a great idea.
A sense of transparency.
So we can schedule that when it looks,
Ellen, you said 4K.
Anything else?
4K.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
All right, we are going to schedule meetings and have your pen ready because not everything is on here. So there will be a special Board of Education meeting on Monday, October 26th at 6 o'clock. There will be an Education Program Committee meeting on Monday, November 2nd at 6. There will be a special board meeting on Monday, November 2nd at 6:30. Personnel will meet Monday, November 9th at 6 o'clock. There will be a special Board of Education meeting on Monday, November 9th at 6:30. Finance and Facilities will meet Monday, November 16th at 6 o'clock. The next regular board meeting will be Monday, November 16th at 6:30. And then my recommendation is that we have a board retreat on Thursday, January 21st, which is typically when we would have been in Milwaukee for the WASB conference, but we won't be there. And as part of that board retreat, we could have a discussion of white fragility, which we have been putting off. The reason for waiting, it feels like it's that long. Already our November meetings are scheduled. December is going to be really busy. It makes sense to use that opportunity of when we would typically be together. If people are okay with that, my suggestion is that we ask Erin to send out an online survey about the times that we would be available, because it would be a longer. Maybe we would do it during the day, maybe we would do it in the evening with a meal or something like that.
Would that be up against WASB sessions, or is this prior to when the WASB sessions would start?
This would be the week of that. I think that, I don't foresee, at least at this point, that we would be doing lots of coordinated watching WASB events together. I think if people have interest, that they would do that on their own. So we can take that into a consideration when we put down potential options for the time.
They haven't released anything.
Right, so we don't have no knowing.
Donald
And
Trump is
Aaron,
gonna
so
be the
as far as WASB,
So,
the convention, I'm assuming that people who are interested in participating virtually would need to register for that type of online virtual registration or whatever.
Yeah.
So when that information becomes available, if you could make sure that we get it.
Well, they're saying November 1st.
Okay, because I don't know that,
Release it, so.
I don't know we can necessarily say that if you're planning to build it, that you would be doing all of those sessions that way. And hopefully there could be some picking and choosing, that they give us that flexibility, we'll see.
That's what it sounds like.
Okay. All right, anything else for scheduled meetings? That's a lot to schedule. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Kind of rough on you guys, I know.
Yeah.